Hi, I'm Josh Hockman with Park Industries Customer Service Department. On this video, we are going to talk about how to dial in the blade on a Yukon. This is on a Yukon II. This machine is not fully installed, but it will be able to give you reference on how to dial. First thing we would recommend is disconnecting the input wire from your arbor start button. So on the back side of your arbor start button, there'll be a wire labeled I 0.6, or yours may be different depending on your model of Yukon. Yours may change, but you'll be looking for that I wire, I and then a number. And just disconnect that from your arbor start button so that nobody can walk by and accidentally hit the arbor start button while you're working on the blade here. So now we'll get into removing our blade shroud. So we'll start by removing our shroud assembly so we can get full access to the blade here. I'll start with the water line. This is a union here, so you don't have to cut your line. You can just take that union off, and we can set our line back and get that up out of the way. Then we will remove our 3 bolts for our shroud. I always like to remove the 2 side bolts first. I think it's easier to let the shroud just hang from the top bolt and hold that up then. If you want, you can remove your water fork. It makes it a little bit easier to pull the shroud off there. We will set our shroud to the side. And now we will get set up for the dial indicator, and we'll show you how to set that up. Okay, now we have our dial indicator set up. Your setup may look a little different here. This machine is not fully installed, so the concrete's not poured on the table or anything like that, but you'd just be working off of your table height here. We are using a blade for our base, a nice thick, larger blade that is sturdy on there. So you want to just get a blade down on a level surface there. Hopefully your concrete is a level surface, and you don't have to go off of the table. If you have a cart or a stool or anything like that you can attach the dial to, you can also use that. So we have our dial all set up here, and we're just going to make a dot right next to our dial, and we're going to spin that so that the dial is right on our dot. We always want to dial a blade referencing off of one spot on the blade. So that's the point of the dot there. You also want to make sure your dial is roughly 6 or 5.5 to 6 inches up from the center of the arbor here. So you get a nice distance of travel. The more travel you have, the more accurate you can dial in the blade here. So once you have that, we want to just zero out our dial indicator. Get that to 0. Always reference the small dial and make sure that you reference that number. Every time the large dial spins once around, the small dial will move 1 number. So we want to make sure that the dial will not, or that we look like we're at 0, but it actually did a full 180 on that dial. We can Z up then. And I'm going to just insert, in this case, I'm using just a bent paper clip to hold my dial indicator back. You can use a coin, a washer, anything you want, or just hold it back if you would like. And we want to take out the vibration from the machine. And in this case, I have a lip here because this has a thicker core on this blade. So I don't want to catch on that lip and skew my numbers on the dial. So we will raise up here. I always do like starting with the blade all the way down and going up. And we're just going to stop our Z travel once we get to our dot. Lightly tap that off. I'm going to come up a little bit and get right on that dot and take my reading. So we are at 2 thou here. So our tolerance, if you're running a 12 or 14 inch blade, our tolerance is 4/1000ths of an inch. If you're dialing, if you can get yours to be a larger travel, your tolerance is like on a 24 inch blade, your tolerance is 8 thou. So we are within tolerance on this one. We're half of our tolerance, which is good. If you do find that you are out of tolerance, you can just take your dial indicator to see which way that needs to move. So in this case, if I pull it out, it goes more positive. And so that means that this blade actually, that dial needs to come in to get to 0. So when you're dialing your Z here, then that means that this blade has to tip, the bottom has to go in. So in this case, if I had 10 thou on my dial indicator, you want to go half your distance to start out with there. So you'd only want to put about 5 thou shim in between the arbor motor and the frame of the machine. So to do that, there's 4 ears on the arbor motor, so 2 behind the blade here and 2 on the opposite fan end of the arbor motor. You can loosen them up, and then you can loosen the pusher on one side. Don't loosen both sides of the pusher, because if your x-axis is dialed correctly there, then you can use that pusher that you never moved as your set point to tighten up your pusher. So loosen only one pusher and both ears there to let that drop down, slide your shims in, bolt everything tight, and repeat the process to see what you get there. If you need more shims or less shims there. Once your Z is all dialed in, then we can go to dialing the x-axis. So we'll jump right into that here. I want to drop my Z-axis, or my dial indicator down. My angle change, so always trying to make sure my dial is nice and straight. So that needle right there is nice and straight with that blade. We're going to come down. And what I'm going to do here is just making sure, and same with your setup on the last one, making sure you're not hitting the center of the arbor there. So I'm just going to Z until I will clear that. And we'll move our x-axis and get right on the dial, or line up right with the dial here again. Always making sure that the dial is pushed out a little bit here. I personally set mine so that my small dial is on at least 1 or 2. Just a nice even number as a reference, but always want to make sure you're pushed out. So if the dial when you get to the other side, if it ends up being back farther, if you're not pushed out a little bit, you will not see that reference there. So then we'll zero out our dial indicator again, taking note of what our small dial is, and then our large dial is zeroed out. And we'll insert our spacer there to hold that back. And we are going to set our dial back on the blade and get that right on that dot again. And we'll check our dial here, and it looks like we are at 2 thou also on our X travel here. So same tolerances, a 12 or 14 inch blade is 4 thousandths, and a 24 inch blade would be 8 thousandths for that tolerance there. If you do need to move anything here, same concept. If you're 10 thou out, you would want to move that half the distance. So we'd want to move it only 5 thousandths. So how you do that is same concept on the ears of the arbor motor. There's the 4 ears, 2 right behind the blade, 2 back by the fan motor, and you can just crack them loose depending on which direction you need to go. If this is my arbor motor, and let's say this front corner needs to come back, right here, this back corner, do not loosen that one. Just crack the other 3 loose so that it will pivot on that. Once you have them cracked loose, then you can use your pusher bolts to push that half your distance that you're measuring on your dial indicator. Once you have that, tighten everything back up, and keep in mind you might get some skewed numbers with tightening. It may move a little bit, so just pay attention to how that's moving and take reference of that, of how you need to compensate for that. Then just move that in to, once you get that into tolerance, I would always, if you are changing on the dial, if you're moving anything, I would always start back. So I started on this side of the blade, go back to this side of the blade and zero out and do the same process again. Don't zero out here. It does get a little confusing then if you zero out again here, because your numbers will be flip-flopping from positive to negative. So it's a lot easier if you always start on the same side of the blade. Once you get that done and you're all dialed in, you can put your blade shroud back on, your water line back on, and you should be good to go there. Making sure that your table is flat then. If you planed your table with arbor motor that was out of tolerance, that will skew your table. So if you did a significant change there and you've planed your table right after that, you may want to replane your table. As always, if you have any questions, please give our customer service department a call and we'd be glad to help. Thank you.